What are the core changes that were made in SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 15 and Enterprise 15? Let's talk about those. Linux kernel 4.12 has been implemented. OpenSSL 1.1 is used by default. Wayland is now available and is used by default in the desktop variant. And the YAST partitioner has been updated as well, with the libstorage-ng library having been redone. To begin with, the Linux kernel 4.12 is being used. That brings a lot of enhancements and features that are implied with that version. You should know that so that if you need to validate your version of applications or whatever implementation you're going to be making, that 4.12 has the feature set that you're pursuing. Let's talk about OpenSSL 1.1 though. 1.1 is replacing two versions of OpenSSL, one directly and the other implied. 0.98 of OpenSSL, that version has been end-of-lifed and has been removed as of SUSE Linux Enterprise 15. With SLES 12, you could install it with the legacy module. That is no longer the case with SLE 15. OpenSSL 1.0 has a lifetime that is shorter than SUSE Linux Enterprise 15's product lifecycle. Therefore, it has been moved to the legacy module, and it is not expected to receive additional feature updates or security certifications, both because of SUSE, but also because the upstream product is not planning on being updated. Now, OpenSSL 1.1, which is the default version of OpenSSL for SLE 15, should be used as the mainstream use for product deployment and development and the feature set that goes with it. Now, let's define a little bit more carefully what OpenSSL 1.1.0 brings to the table. Specifically, the DES API has been completely removed, and since it had some architectural security level issues, those are gone. That is gone, and it's a good thing. Now, structures in the libSSL public header files have been removed as well, and they're now referred to as opaque, meaning you can still access information that would normally be stored in a header file, but you use what are called accessor functions to get access to those things, and that's the method for accessing them. There are also a bunch of deprecated macros and functions that have been removed by default from OpenSSL 1.1.0. Now, keep in mind, again, I said deprecated and old. Those are still technically in the code, and you can get them and compile OpenSSL if you need them back. However, by default, we have removed them so that they're not a part of the default implementation. Wayland is a new piece to the open source world, relatively, although it's been in development for quite some time. Wayland is a replacement for X Windows and is intended to be a simpler, easier to develop for and maintain version or tool for working with graphical environments. In SLE 15, it's available for installation for the server variant, but it is not the default, so Xorg is still being used. In SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop, however, Wayland is the default. Now, keep in mind also that because of the way Wayland currently works, it doesn't have a production-ready tool such as VNC for doing remote desktop access. So if you're planning on doing remote access into a desktop environment on a SUSE Linux Enterprise server box, you won't want Wayland deployed. This shouldn't be a major problem simply because it is not the default. Xorg is, and VNC works with the X.org implementation. Now, the last thing to look at is the the YAST partitioner. The storage backend that was previously used by YAST, called libstorage, has been replaced, well, let's just say it's been upgraded by libstorage NG, which gives a bunch of additional features and some improvements to various functions within any storage-related task that involves YAST. As an example, it's now possible to install a fully encrypted system without using LVM, and this is part of the automatic proposal if you need it. And it correctly handles file systems that are placed directly on a disk without defining partitions first, which is something that YAST struggled with in previous iterations. Now, to go along with this YAST partitioner change and the libstorage backend change are some changes to the way that storage is interpreted and the YAST2 storage module as well. It's been replaced with YAST2 Storage NG, and there are several items that have been removed from the partitioner. Crypt files is no longer there. You use LUX-based encryption instead. Device mapper is not there. The unused devices has been removed. Mount graph is removed, and TempFS, which is now largely managed by the system anyway. Other things that you don't see inside of the partitioner tool. You don't see devices that cannot be manipulated by the partitioner. As an example, DASDs that are unformatted don't show up in the partitioner. Individual devices of a multipath device, so you can't drill down on a multipath individual component and see them, but you couldn't really interact with them anyway. They just no longer display. And disks that are part of a BIOS RAID no longer show up because obviously you don't want to directly interact with them and break the RAID. So that has been removed as well.